And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on throughout this office hours series is just going through and making sure you guys understand some of the basics, some of the advanced stuff, a little bit of everything, so that as you progress through your usage of Realvolve and the things that um, it can do for you, um, you at least have a rudimentary understanding of some of the capabilities, so that as you want to start focusing in on any particular thing, um, you at least have some basic understanding of it. And today's office hours is going to be kind of going along that same route as far as helping you build a buyer lead workflow, and we're going to do it from just actually showing you how to do it and go through that process. And a lot of times, just seeing the process helps you understand kind of the thought process of what goes into building a workflow, whether it's buyer lead or whatever. And Kendra is going to take us through that process, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Mark Stepp. For those that don't know me, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve, and spent the last 30 plus years really helping real estate agents understand technology and understanding the why, and especially the why within some of the processes and things that we do within Realvolve, and why we actually put them in there. The thought process of putting these together has been a culmination of many years of seeing how real estate agents do their business and understanding that there are other software options out there that you can choose from. We know that. But not all of them are really geared towards the way you guys do business. And that was one of the things that we really wanted to focus on is how can we give you guys the technology that you need to get the things that you need to get done on a daily basis and help you save time. And that's why I've been around these many years. My cohort in crime today is Kendra. Kendra, go ahead and introduce yourself. Except you may be muted. Hang on. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Let's try that again. My name is Kendra Rouse. I work in our premium services department. I and my team work one-on-one with you to kind of do what we're doing today to make sure that we understand your business processes, some of those things that you don't even think about that you're doing every single day, and how can we systematize those and put them into the software that really helps automate you and your business to help you, work smarter and not harder.
Absolutely.
So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be building workflow. Like Mark said, we're going to go in and kind of just take a look at what that looked like. If I'm starting from scratch, how do I build each step? What options do I have, and things like that. We'll give you some tips and for outside of these office hours, which we host every Wednesday at this time, to get help and support. And then also a little bit more about our premium services department. If you have not been on our previous office hours, those are posted on our Facebook Realvolve page. And so the link is there, facebook.com/groups/Realvolve. And you have access to our previous recordings. And like Mark said, each one is geared towards a different thing. And so I would just take a look kind of at those titles and see kind of, where you're at and which one of those can help you the most. So when you're thinking about building a workflow, you really need to talk about your needs. And, we've done another workflow about designing your business processes and your workflow suite and deciding what you're going to do. And today we're talking about building lead buyer. Okay. So if you get a new lead that comes in, you have never made communication with this person or minimal contact. They've inquired on your property. They have inquired through Zillow or your website or some other means where they've come into your wheelhouse, but you haven't made initial contact. So some of the things that you'll be making decisions inside of Realvolve. When you're designing workflows in Realvolve, it's either going to be a contact, a property, or a transaction. And so in this case, we're going to build a contact workflow because we're dealing specifically with the relationship with that contact. Whereas if you were doing things for an open house or getting ready to list a property, we would want to build a property workflow. And a transaction workflow is going to deal with those things after you have an accepted contract through closing. You're going to think about what roles are involved. So when you think about roles, you have internal roles and external roles. And so internal roles, is it just you? Are you going to be responsible for doing everything? Do you have an admin inside of Realvolve? Do you have the want to have an admin in the future? And we can take those things into consideration when we're building that workflow. And I've spoke about triggers before, but you always want to think about a trigger when you're talking about using your workflow, because if we build this workflow out and in your mind, nothing triggers you to start using that workflow, then you're never going to use that workflow. And so in this case, with the lead buyer, that buyer has come into your wheelhouse somehow, right? An inquiry on your website, a new lead from Zillow, a new lead from realtor.com. Somehow that person has come in, you believe that they have the potential to be a buyer, and you want to make initial contact with them to vet them and have that initial conversation. And then also what dates are important. And so those are all things that we're going to take a look at today. All right, so let's go over to Realvolve. As we're going through, feel free to ask questions. I want to be here as a resource. So if things come up, another thing, there is no right or wrong way to build a workflow. Maybe my processes differ than your processes. Processes differ from location to location, and you may choose to handle things, a different way. I may not include things that you'd want to do, and you may have questions on those or questions about why I'm not including something. And so feel free to answer those questions as we go along.
And whenever you're building workflows, one of the things that I really like to stress is kind of understand what the intent of that, and Kendra's going to go over that as far as the, whether it's a contact, property, transaction, but even subcategorizing those into, are they conversion type workflows? I like to talk about the core strategies. Are they conversion workflows and grouping those together? Are they part of your operations, the O in core? Do they help you get your business done inside once the listing marketing stuff happens, once the transactional stuff happens? Or is it in the R section of core, which is the retention of those contacts, the follow-up, the nurture after the fact, after everything's closed and stuff? And then it all wraps together with the experiences. But
and I think the first step of that is really stopping and taking a look at what you're doing currently. And typically that can be broken down into lead management, lead conversion, property management, transaction management. So at a very high level, you can stop and say, well, these are how I'm going to classify things. And so very specifically with the type of workflow that we're launching today, the step one is always get the client into the system. Okay. So let's take a look at an example. Specifically with Beth Homebuyer. Beth Homebuyer came in from Zillow. Okay. Specifically, we have a Zapier automation set up so that if a new lead comes in from Zillow, it goes over to Zapier, automatically coming into Realvolve and doing a few things. It is inputting their phone number, their email address. It can assign them a category. It can assign them a certain tag, which it did. It gave them a tag of Zillow. And then it also pulled in the information that came over from them. So we know that Beth Homebuyer is interested in 123 Main Street, and it gave me the URL so that I could click on it and get more information. So that's great, right? That's step one. I automated that process as much as possible. I did not have to come in here and manually input Beth Homebuyer. She came in automatically. So then you're asking yourself, well, what do I do with her? What are the next steps? And in this particular case, I've never made initial contact with this person. And so I want a workflow that I can go in and tell Zapier, if a type of lead comes in from this lead source, automatically start this person on this workflow to do a few things for me automatically. So anytime I'm building a workflow, I'm going to click on workflows at the very top. And I can see over here on the left, the list of workflows that I have. And your account, you may have purchase workflows. They may have come with certain workflows. So you want to check and see if you have something similar, you already have this workflow. But we're going to be building a lead buyer workflow. Also, if you noticed at the top here, I only saw a few workflows because this icon was selected. I know it's selected because it's dark black. If I deselect it, I'm given all of my workflows, which I have a lot of them. But I can say I only want to see contact workflows, contact and property, or transactions. So I have the ability to select and deselect different categories of workflows. So to build a workflow, I'm going to click on workflows and I'm going to click on this plus sign. And I'm going to click create new workflow and continue. Once I've done that, I need to title my workflow. In this case, I'm going to call this buyer lead. You can call it whatever you want. Just really important that you remember what you called it and that you have a system or a naming convention in place so that you're remembering what this workflow is called and what's triggering my workflow. In this case, what's triggering my workflow is that I got a new internet capture lead of some sort from my website, from a paid source or otherwise. I'm going to choose a use with. And so this is what we talked about. Is this a contact, a property, or a transaction workflow? In this case, this workflow is launched specifically on Beth Homebuyer. So I'm going to select contact. And I can also give it a description. So I'm going to say auto launched on any new internet lead capture. You can call this whatever you want. That is a buyer. So this description really is just to give you more of a point of reference on exactly what this is or what this workflow's mission is. Alternative workflow. We've talked a little bit about alternative workflows in the past, but this says if I go to stop this workflow, do I want the system to essentially guess what workflow I want to start next? And if I am starting lead buyer, my goal of this workflow is to convert, make initial contact, and ideally get this person on active buyer workflow, because that means I've talked to them, they're an active buyer, they're ready to go, I'm going to work with them. So if I stop buyer lead, my best case scenario is that I'm starting active buyer. And so I'm going to select active buyer. And you do not have to have an alternative workflow. This is just an extra step, a little bit advanced, but it's saying, you know, if I stop this, does the system want to guess what I'm going to be doing next? If I add tags in this section, this says by me launching this workflow, that qualifies that person to be tagged with these certain things. And I'm not going to do that.
It's mainly for searching the workflows themselves. So if you go in and you want to find anything that deals with buyers, if you were to tag it with buyers, you can certainly tag it, and then whenever you do your searches, any of those tags that are tagged with buyer would show up.
Yeah. In groups, I don't think I'm really going to use a group on this, but we use a lot of groups in transactional workflows. An instance of a group is if I came in here, let's just say this has nothing to do with this, but if I wanted a group of HOA, what that is doing is I can create an activity and I can say group this activity with this tag or this group, in this case, HOA. So if I have a property with an HOA, I want to see certain tasks. However, if I do not have a transaction, that property does not have an HOA, there'd be a certain subset of tasks that I would not want to see. And groups can basically allow you to subcategorize activities so that you see them or you don't see them based on what's appropriate for this specific situation. In this particular case, for a buyer lead, I'm going to treat them the same. And so I'm not going to create any groups. Past activity options. If I had a specific date on here and saying, you know, I want to do a specific activity March 3rd or, you know, repeating certain times and that date had already passed, I can allow that activity to still show up. I can skip any past due, or I can start from the next valid annual date. In this case, the way that we're setting up, this isn't really going to affect us much. When I hit add, I've essentially created this workflow, and now I don't have any activities, but I do have a workflow, and I can see that here on the left. So the first thing I'm going to do is create an activity. And so I can come in and click on create another activity, and I'm given an option to create my activities. In this case, remember our context. I have that lead coming in automatically from Zapier into Realvolve. And so one of the first things that I want to do is I want to notify myself. And so, or a team member. And so I'm going to do send new lead text to the agent. Okay. So I'm essentially setting up a task that is going to auto text me and tell me, hey, you have a new lead. Once I've titled my activity, the assign to is going to have a drop down, and there's a couple different things you can do in here. You have the option of either naming it. So right now I'm in the team testing account with a sub user of Lisa Test. I could say team testing is always going to do this assignment, or this sub user, maybe Lisa Test is an admin. However, if Lisa Test ever leaves Realvolve and doesn't have an account anymore, and I create or I add to my team, I would have to come in here and create or change each one of my activities. So we typically want to do assign to roles. And in this case, the record owner is going to be the person that is that owns this lead. Okay, so when we set this up and we have Beth Homebuyer coming in, we have told the system under the contact, under record details, this team testing account owns this lead, and it came in filtered that way based on the way that we set this up. So we're going to say the record owner should be the one doing this. Now, in this case, the next thing we have to do is choose with, and the with is who we're going to communicate with. And so in this case, I'm sending a text to myself. And so I'm going to come in and contact of assigned to Realvolve user. And what this is saying is assign this or communicate with whoever this is assigned to. Okay, so I'm sending a text to myself.
You could have the Zap set up to do some kind of round robin, stuff like that. So your record owner may be different for each new lead that comes in. And by doing it this way, it looks at that record owner, who's the record owner in your team. And based off of who's in your team, it's going to send it to that contact record, that contact person in your database for that user, because every user in the database has its own contact record in your database. So it'll forward it to that same person.
Mm-hmm. When do I want this to happen? Under schedule, 0 days after start date. I want this to happen right away. I want to know as soon as that lead came in. I could add tags here. Again, if this activity is ran, do I want certain tags applied? In this case, I do not. A description would allow me to basically give myself, scripts or insight or anything else like this. In this case, I want this email or this text message to come out automatically. And so I don't really need anything in here. As with notes, I do not need a checklist of items because I'm just going to have a text message to myself. I'm going to change the type to text. And down here under action, I'm going to say send new lead notice text. Okay. So I've titled what I want this action to do. Under send message, I'm going to have this done automatically. It wouldn't make sense for me to do this manually, because if I came in and I sent myself a text message that said you have a new lead, I would already see that I have a new lead. So I want to do this automatically.
Hey, Kendra, on that one, because it's something that you want notification of right away, instead of doing automatically, I would actually encourage you to use immediately. And the difference between immediate and automatic is simply with immediate, as soon as that workflow is started. I mean, just as soon as it started, it sends it. It doesn't look at the date or anything at all. It just sends it immediately. And by doing it immediately, you actually get that notification quicker since it's sending you the notification. This is an autoresponder type of thing that's coming in. As soon as that workflow starts, immediately send it. And there's a very fine difference between automatic and immediate, but immediate is faster.
Mm-hmm. So if inside of your settings, you do have the ability to say, to give the system authorization to send out automatic things. When you do that, you select a time that you want things to go out automatically. So if you have time restrictions in your settings, setting it to automatically could definitely affect that. But setting it to immediately, I'm assuming if this lead came in at 2 a.m., you would still get that text message, right, Mark?
Correct.
Okay, so that may be a distinction that you want to make, whether you have kind of time restrictions or not, or you care what time you're getting those text messages, because we are setting this up to text you personally. And so either way, immediately, automatically, whatever you decide on that. In this case, I want a text message. So I have selected that I want to send an SMS, and then I'm going to select what template I want to use. If I did not have a template, I would come into templates. I would select a new template, author a new template, and I would call this auto notification to agent of new lead. Remember, we are going to use this with a contact workflow because that's how we're designing it. Now, VIA gives us the chance to say, what kind of template is this? Is it email marketing, email transactional, or SMS? Email marketing are going to be those things that you want that opt out or that unsubscribed option at the bottom to give them to give the receiver the option to opt out of those kind of communication. Email transactional is more of those things where you're notifying things or you're doing business, specifically with a transaction, or you have business with that person. And then SMS, of course, is what we're doing currently. Once you type in your content, you're going to hit save. And then whatever you've titled this text message would then be searchable here. So in this case, I already have something called text alert to agent. And so if I want to preview that, I can click on this preview button. It's going to pop open another thing. So here I've already created this. It says new contact, workflow contact, first name, last name. So this would come through with Beth Homebuyer has come into Realvolve from contact source. The where contact source came from is when I sent that lead from Zillow over to Zapier, I had already set up my Zap so that when Beth Homebuyer came in, it was auto detected that she came in from Zillow and she was given a contact source of Zillow. So this will say, come into Realvolve from Zillow. Please reach out. And then it gives her mobile. So workflow contact home mobile and her email. And then it's also pulling in a signature field for a signature. So once I've done that, then I'm going to hit save. And then this is set up. So basically this activity is set up so that anytime a new lead comes in, it is going to run this text immediately to whoever owns this lead and tell them that they have a new lead, pulling in that information. Any other thing you want to go over on that specifically?
Yeah, for brand new leads, that is the very first thing that you want to get, your speed to lead notification of yourself and to the person that is the lead is so important, and making sure that you've got those two elements on anything is critical. And explain what you just did there.
So the title of this, when this activity comes in, it's going to run automatically or immediately, and it's going to file itself under completed activities. When it does that, I'm still going to have record of this, but I'm going to need to manage this activity long-term as well. And so what I did in front of this is I added an I to it, and I did that because it's immediate. Okay. So if I want to come in here in the future, without having to open up each one of these and know how I set them up. As kind of just a shortcut, what I do is I put a parenthesis of an I or a parenthesis of an A if something's immediate or automatic, so that I know that how this particular thing is running. So kind of just a personal preference there, but it allows me to kind of see things at a higher view to know how I set this up.
Yeah, I love it whenever you guys do that. That's something I didn't think of originally, but definitely a benefit whenever you're looking at your entire list, figuring out what I send immediately or automatically. A lot of times it's not really apparent. And by having that indicator on there, it really helps.
So again, we're thinking about what are the things that we want to do when Beth Homebuyer comes in, okay? We also have to think about what is happening inside of the system that they're coming from. So is Zillow sending out an automatic text, an automatic notification, or an email, or, we do not want to have duplication of activities, so we really want to say what's happening to that lead before it gets into our CRM, and what do we need to do to manage it once we receive them. In this case, we're going to act like that nothing's happening before they get to us. And so one of the first things that we would want to do, obviously, is make contact with them. But I do think there's benefit in sending out an immediate text and an immediate email. Again, the decision can be made. Do you want that automatic so it runs off of your predetermined automatic rules in your settings, or would you want them to receive an email, at 11 p.m. if they sent you that lead at 11 p.m.? And so in this case, I'm going to say send intro email to new buyer lead. I'm going to change this to record owner. The other importance behind this is, who it's assigned to. So let's say that if I came in and I assigned this to this sub account, this admin, and I auto applied a signature, the system is going to look at the signature of whoever is sending out that activity. So if I assign an activity to an admin and the system sends that email as if it were assigned from the admin, it is going to apply the admin signature. So it's important that I take that into account as to how that email is going to look, or what information it's going to auto generate based off of the merge fields that I'm using. So again, record owner, I'm going to assign it to the record owner because that's who owns the lead. And I'm making the agent that is assigned this lead responsible for sending this out. And this is going out automatically or immediately. So it doesn't, really know nothing that they're doing anyway. The with is going to be workflow contact. Workflow contact is the record. It is Beth Homebuyer. It is the contact that you're launching the workflow on. So we have the person that owns the lead sending a communication to the contact itself. We're going to leave the schedule 0 days after start date because we want this to happen automatically or immediately. We're going to come over and change our to-do to an email. I'm going to put my little I back in here. And then I'm going to set up my action. And my action is going to be sending an intro email. Same thing. If I did not have a template, I would open up a new tab, come to templates. I would create new template and I would type that out. In this case, I already have one. I'm going to go ahead and select how I'm going to send it. I'm going to send it immediately. In this case, I want to send an email. And then, so I've got, let's take a look at this email. In this case, I've entitled this one Lead Buyer Day 01 Intro Email. The way that this can be helpful if you're doing, day 1, day 2, things like that, as far as long-term template management, and we'll take a look at that as well. I've selected that this is a contact because we've done a contact workflow, and it is an email, and I've titled, or I've added a subject. Did you find what you need? This email is already written, and you can see here, you always want to check your sources, especially with automatic emails, because that text that's going to come out to the agent, and now we have an email going to the lead, it is using a merge field of source. And so it's imperative that we verified that this contact has a source type, or if it does not, it's going to pull this information over as blank. And so when you're doing things, especially automatically or immediately, we want to ensure that our process is set up so that we don't have blank information. With our chat GPT, go ahead.
Two different things, and actually you may be going into this. We just got a question from Bobby. He was asking about, can you include BombBomb videos to this action? And absolutely, we do have integration with BombBomb. You can come up here, click on the little BombBomb icon, and wherever your cursor is placed, it will let you insert that video into that cursor position. So that's one thing. The other thing that I want to make sure you guys know is on the toolbar, there is a new chat GPT icon that you can utilize, and please utilize it if you've purchased workflows from other systems or other people, and the wording is probably not exactly what you want, or, especially if it is something that maybe you've purchased a few years ago from someplace, and you've just had it kind of sitting dormant in your account, or you've loaded it in from some other place. Use ChatGPT to rewrite and restructure and check grammar and the wording in what you're creating, and even give it instructions like, rewrite this to give better click rates, or whatever. And it will go through and actually do the process of creating the content. And if you look up at the upper right of this window that's popped up, it says include the message. So you don't even have to rewrite. You just say improve this email message, however you want it improved. And then you click generate. It takes the content that's in that template already, and then it will rewrite it for you and put it in there. Then you can go in there and add it in. But taking something that may be very very basic, and actually you can even check sentiment scores on this now. So you could go in there and say, what's the sentiment of this message? And it will come back and say, oh, it's negative or neutral or positive. Or you can, say, give me a scoring process. So the sentiment of this is positive, which is great, and it's professional. So, it's actually in pretty good shape. But if you get something that's neutral, if you give the response that says neutral, then you can say up there, rewrite this message so that the sentiment is positive. And then it goes through and it will rewrite it. Or if you are in an area where you need bilingual type of content, you can actually go in there and say, hey, rewrite this message so that it's in Spanish or Portuguese or whatever, and it will go through and do that process for you. Now you've got new content that is usable for your workflows in ways that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And ChatGPT is just an amazing tool for giving you that capability, and having that built in it just makes it that much easier.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I like too is that if I say rewrite this message or improve this message, and I hit generate and I don't like that, I want to see some other things, I can hit generate again and it will come up with a new message. And so definitely if I'm taking pieces out of it or just having it write the whole thing, once I've kind of done this, I can come in and at the bottom, I'm going to select what I want to happen. Do I want to add this message or do I want to replace it? In this case, it doesn't make sense for me to leave the information I already had in that template. I want to just replace what was already in there. And I'm going to go ahead and do it with some Spanish that I can't read. All right. So let's say I wanted to do this. And to Bobby's question, I've decided that any person that comes in from my online lead captures, they're going to get a video from me. And so if I have BombBomb connected in the back end, I can come in and I can insert a BombBomb video by clicking on this icon. Like Mark was saying, I want to ensure that my icon is selected wherever I want it. In this case, I've decided that I want the video in between the first paragraph and the second paragraph. So I'm going to select my BombBomb icon. When I do that, I'm given two options. I can either record a new video. Thank you so much. I'm glad I have your information. I'll be giving you a call. We can't wait to work with you. Something like that, right? I can record it on the spot and add it in there, or I can come over to choose a video. I can select whatever video I want and I can insert it. When I do that, it's going to show a preview of it and I'm going to hit save. So that video is going to start, it'll give them a brief kind of preview of it and allow them to play it directly inside of their email. Once I've created my email, I'm going to go ahead and save it. And then in my action, I'm going to search for it and make sure that I've selected it. One option that I have here is to update the last email date. And what that's saying is update the last email date of whoever is in the with field. Right now, it's the person that I launched this workflow on, Beth Homebuyer. So I want it to go into her contact record and update that I emailed her. And in this case, I do. It's less work for me. I also have the option under BC or CC and BCC to CC certain people. In this case, a connected relationship. So if Beth Homebuyer comes in, which she probably wouldn't come in auto-connected to a relationship, but you do have the option to say, look inside of the system and see if that contact has a connected relationship. And if they do, go ahead and CC them. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to add it. I now have two tasks. All of them happen immediately. The next thing that I would want to do is I'm going to recreate that process and send that same lead buyer a text also, okay? Excuse me. Then I'm going to make some decisions on what I'm going to do. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to build out that intro text to that lead buyer, but it's going to be the same premise. I'm going to start something right away. I'm going to set it to immediately. I'm going to create a text that auto texts them. And then I want to think about, okay, well, what have I done? I had a new lead come in. I sent a text to myself that said, hey, you have a new lead. Let's contact them as soon as possible. I sent that contact a text message and an email automatically. The next thing I'm probably going to do is set a task to myself to make an intro call. So if I come in here and make intro, my goodness. If I just put make intro call, when you see that task, make intro call, you may see that it's associated with a contact, but I prefer to have the contact's information directly in the title. And so I can use a few of my merge fields. And so if I hit bracket, I can see here that I can pull in the contact's first name. So this title is going to say make intro call to Beth Homebuyer. Again, I'm going to assign this to the record owner because it's the record owner's job to make that initial contact. I do not need to set a with field because I'm not doing communication through the system. I'm not sending text messages. I'm not doing emails. I'm not doing those sort of things. But I do want to utilize my checklist options. And what's helpful about the checklist is that when this task comes up and I click into it to complete this task, through the power of merge fields, I can auto pull in information so that it displays right there in my checklist and I don't have to get out and go look for that information. In this case, what would be helpful for me is the home mobile of that contact. So if I have their home mobile in the system, it would display directly in this activity. I want the ability to add any notes. If I'm using my contact cross section, I want to update their stage and status if I need to. So I'm going to add these as options. And I'm also going to update my last call date. Okay. So if I have this notes merge field in here, if it will allow a typable field when I go to complete this activity, and anything I type into it while I'm completing this activity would be stored under the radar or the notes and correspondence of that contact. The other thing that I'm going to do is create a couple actions because I'm always thinking about funnels. I'm always thinking about, well, what's going to happen? If I make this intro call to her, what are the likely scenarios? And in this case, like I said earlier, ideally, if I get a hold of her and I'm going to start working with them, then I'm going to start my active buyer workflow. And so through actions, we actually have the ability to start and stop workflows. So typically your lead buyer workflow is going to be a series of days, 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, whatever it is. It's going to be a series of phone calls, emails, text messages, social media contacts for a certain number of days to make initial contact. When you make initial contact, it wouldn't be appropriate to keep this workflow going because it's going to keep reminding you to make initial contact with the person that you've already made initial contact with. So it's important, or what I'm doing is basically allowing myself a shortcut so that if I make contact, what's going to happen next? And in this case, I would want to start active buyer, if they're actually an active buyer, and I would want to stop the workflow that they're currently on. Please buyer lead. Okay. So if I choose to run this action, because I got a hold of them, I'm going to start working with them. We're looking at property tomorrow. I'm going to start the active buyer workflow and I'm going to stop lead buyer workflow. I'm going to give myself a second option to start long-term buyer workflow. And long-term buyer workflow essentially is I got a hold of them. They're going to do something. They're not committed to another agent. They're just not ready to do it right now. It may be a couple months, it may be 6 months from now, but I want to have a series of check-in reminders. I want to have educational emails. I want to keep them up to date on what's going on with the market. So when they're ready, that they're going to choose us. So again, I'm going to start and stop workflows. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start long-term buyer. I'm going to stop buyer lead. So now I've created an activity to make an intro call. As soon as this lead comes in, it's going to give me all of these options and allow me to update information particular to this contact directly in this checklist. And then I also have the option to either to stop this workflow and start them on best case scenario active buyer, or if I get a hold of them and this one isn't quite ready yet, then I can start them on long-term buyer. And I could have several kind of choose your path things in this action step. Now, if I decide to sync something with Google, I have to tell this activity that I want to do so. Just a second, sorry. My laptop came on slow. I have to check that I want to do that. And then also under the schedule, I want to, because by default, it's 0 days after start date, I'm going to also select this drop down and tell where I want to put it. So if I wanted to see this intro call at specific times, I could start and end a time. But in this case, I just want it filed into my Google Sync for all day. And so by selecting all day, as well as sync this activity with Google, I've told it to go over to Google and be on my calendar there as well. So I'm going to go through and basically create a series of things that I want to do to, again, make initial contact. Another thing that I think is helpful, so typically the way this workflow looks is you're going to make first day, you're going to send them an auto text, an auto email. You're going to try to make initial contact by that phone call. Day 2, maybe you're going to make another phone call, and sometimes we'll do a social media search. I like to use the checklist here, but I want to schedule this 1 day after start date. So 1 day after this workflow is started, essentially day 2. And in my checklist, I can use my merge fields, and let's just say their Facebook link is here. Maybe I'm going to look at them up on Twitter. And so I can use these merge fields to pull in to not only enter that information, but also use that as a way to access their social media profiles if I already have that in the system. So I'm really going to decide how many days am I going to try to make initial contact with this person, and what's that going to look like? Maybe day 3, I'm going to do a call and an email. Maybe day 4, I'm going to do a call and a text message. And then typically we never want contacts to finish out a workflow and basically us forget about them. Okay. So let's say that we do day 7 email and phone call, and we still haven't reached them. If you complete those activities and you have no activities on there past day 7, then on day 8, this person just falls off of the, they're just gone. And so maybe my process is at the end of this initial workflow, I'm going to put a task in here to evaluate the lead. And then I'm going to put in their first name so I see who it is. I'm going to assign it to the record owner. And I'm going to make this 8 days after start. And this may look different for you. But essentially, I said I'm going to make 7 days of contact attempts on day 8. Well, actually, this would be day 9. Then I'm going to basically decide what I'm going to do with them next. And maybe my process is, if I try for 7 days and I cannot get a hold of somebody, I'm going to just automatically put them on long-term buyer. I'm going to continue to reach out to them periodically. I'm going to send them educational emails and make sure that I'm still in their wheelhouse. So start on.
In today's market, you get to a point where you cannot get in contact with somebody unless they're really, really excited about moving forward in their moving process or something. So if they're really serious, a lot of people are just looky-loos and they just want to, find some basic information and don't want to be bothered. And putting them into that long term is important. But what we want to stress here is that don't give up on, if you don't have workflows, many agents will go through and they'll just stop. It won't go any further. And then the looky-loos or the ones that aren't getting constant notification will go to some other agent. By setting up this workflow and having it go through the process of reminding you each time, make that phone call, send out that text message, do some kind of something, it will keep them in tune with what you're doing for them, but it keeps you in tune with what you need to be doing just in order to keep that buyer in your wheelhouse, like Kendra says. But in today's market, you may be looking at 20 days before you actually get hold of somebody. So don't give up too soon. Many times it's just who's the most repetitive in getting back to that person, and they will unless they tell you to kiss off or something, keep going at it.
Yep, exactly. And so I just kind of want to show you on the front end. We don't have time to build out that whole workflow. If you're in our Navigator program, that workflow is included in your suite of workflows. So definitely, if you haven't already, maybe talk with your Navigator on using that. It's definitely something you're going to go over if you already have it. If you do not have, if you just have the essential suite of workflows, this workflow is available in the library, but you also have an essential workflow suite for a lead buyer. So take a look at that, take some of the concepts that we've had and edit it. So whether it's with your Navigator or on yourself, like Mark was saying, even if you build a workflow 3 years ago, market is not today's market. And so the good thing about workflows is that they can go in there and you can see what works and what doesn't work, and you can change it. You can change it from 6 days of contact to 10 days of contact to I'm going to email and call on day 3 to I'm going to text and call on day 3 and see what works and what doesn't. And so any changes that you make in the back end of that workflow will apply to the next time that workflow is launched. And so I kind of just wanted to show you exactly. I've ran this workflow on Beth Homebuyer. If I come into her activities under completed, I can see that she got the text alert. She got that auto email. She got that auto text. Those things would be logged here when they're sent out. And you can see here under the activities in my radar tab, it's showing me that this intro call is due. I can see her mobile home here, or mobile phone here, so I don't have to get out and do it. Any notes that I add in here, once I hit save and close, those are going to be logged for me here. So I can tell that, I tried to call, I left a voicemail, things like that. I also had Zillow pull in, or Zapier pull in the address that she originally inquired on, which was 123 Main Street. And then you can see here that I have a couple options. I have the long term that I could start if I wanted to run that, or if I got a hold of her and I'm actively going to work with her. If I select this action and hit run, then it's going to say, hey, you want to start active buyer? Yes, I do. I'm going to go ahead and start this. As you can see here, you can see an example of this groups. When you start active buyer, one of the groups that we have in there is referral. So if I deselect referral, you can see that tasks associated with keeping a person that referred you business go away, because I wouldn't want to update somebody if this person hadn't been a referral. So that's a good example of how we can use groups to subset categories of activities. And so in my activities and incomplete, as you can see here, I have, I'll have a series of activities that will allow me to make initial contact, text messages, emails, things like that. The other thing that I think is super helpful inside of your signature, I'm sorry, not your signature, inside of your description, I want to show you what this looks like real quick, and then we'll open up for questions. Inside of my initial call, under description, I've put things here that help me, and this may help your team members, but I think this is, an excellent way to kind of just set yourself up for success. So in this case, we put a script in here. So if the lead answers, introduce yourself, of course, but if the lead doesn't answer, leave a message similar to this. So this can be an excellent way to empower your team members, or just give yourself kind of cues on the go, so that you know the best things that can kind of help you in that moment. So as you can see here, if I click on this pencil, I have access to this description. So as I'm calling Beth Homebuyer, I have this extra verbiage here at my fingertips as well.
Very good. We did have some questions.
Yeah.
Some that I missed earlier. Cheryl was asking, will changes to the workflow after I assign it to contacts apply to prior assignees?
No.
So whenever you start a workflow, it basically takes a snapshot of that workflow, however it's designed, and applies it to that contact, property, or transaction. If you make changes to the workflow structure itself, it will not auto apply itself to anybody that's already started. However, you can restart that workflow, unselect everything, and just maybe if you added something new, just go in there and add just the items that you've added, so that those items do get applied to anybody that you want to apply them to. So that's one way around that. She was also asking about the button for ChatGPT. She missed where that was at. So if you can show where that's at, while go to a couple of the other questions. Andre was saying, do you need a BombBomb account, or are there other video options? So we only integrate currently with BombBomb. However, there may be some other options. In fact, I know of one. They're in the process of doing some integrations with us. I need to check where they're at. But right now, BombBomb is the easiest one, because it lets you record. It takes that recording, immediately makes it into a 6-second GIF file, and puts that motion GIF file into the body of the message, so you can send it. If you try to do that same thing with like YouTube or Vimeo or some of the other options that are out there, you're doing it outside. Just the process of doing it takes much longer. The conversion of the GIF file to insert it, add the link. So while it can be done with other systems, technically it is, it is definitely a challenge for them to get it in and do it properly. And also, if something is trying to use iframe, stay away from that like the plague. Number one, anything that you send with an iframe will typically get stripped out. So if you just happen, and I may be using some terminology that you aren't aware of, but there's some HTML possibilities of sending HTML emails and using a command called iframe to insert something inside of a frame. But whenever you send it through to Gmail receivers, Outlook, several of them, they'll strip out that iframe because iframes can send viruses. So they basically have stopped allowing that. You can put it in a website, but putting it in an email has been stripped out in most cases. So that just won't let you do it that way.
So Cheryl's question, if you're in your templates, if you're in a text message template, the chat GPT icon is going to be here in the bottom left, right here. If you are in an email, it is going to be here. But it looks the same. If you do not have your chat GPT connected, you need to come into your settings, go into integrations, and paste in your what is it called, Mark? I can't even think right now.
The API key.
Yeah, your API key. It'll give you a code from your chat GPT account, and you'll take that code, your API key, you'll paste it into the chat GPT section of the Realvolve under your integrations and settings, and then you'll have access to start using your chat GPT account.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. What else questions we got?
We have a couple more questions. Yeah. Bobby G was saying or asking, you could assign this potential lead to another agent in or with your team, or can you? Absolutely. So whenever you're doing your assignments of your workflow, you can assign, instead of, and depending on where you're at in your workflow, Kendra was using the record owner, and the record owner, whenever you assign a contact, it's defaulted to whoever puts it in or whoever it's assigned to from Zapier. There is an option called assigned agent, and the assigned agent under your contact record can also be used. And if you change the assigned agent, it will change any activities that use assigned agent, and those agents then will get notified that, hey, you've got this, new contact or whatever. So it is possible to do it if you're using the round robin option within the record owner piece that Kendra's showing here. As the lead comes in, you can also have it automatically assign it to either a round robin, who's the next person on the list, or there is a multiple owners where you can assign it to multiple people whenever that lead comes in. So multiple people can be record owner. The challenge with that is whenever you're doing any kind of activities, it will do it to whoever the first one in the list is. So it may or may not be the one you actually want to use.
And so if I set this up right here, and I said, this is my rule for Zillow, and I've selected round robin, what this is saying is if leads come in, assign the first one to Lisa, the second one to team testing, the next one to Lisa, and it will go through that rule set, and then it determine how those leads are going to be assigned based off of these rules that you've set up in your settings under record owner assignment.
Yep.
What other questions we got?
One more. How do you view the description notes in the mobile app if you're connecting someone and you're not in front of your computer? Whenever you look in the mobile app and actually click on the activity, I'm pretty sure it shows you the description. I will double check that, and if it's not, I'll make sure that gets added. It's a good question, Andre. And then for husband and wife, do you set up two different workflows so they are both contacted? So actually, Kendra, how do you train that in Navigators?
Yeah, sure. I'll go over that. I just wanted to show real quick too. If anybody can see my video, if you have an activity inside of this and you click on it, when you open it up, it gives the description. So
We're
you
not,
just,
I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing round robin stuff.
okay. If you anybody sees my photo or look at my video. Okay, so do you see how when I went into my activities in the app? Let me see.
I'm not seeing.
Can anyone? There you go.
There you
Does
go.
everyone see my photo? This is kind of old
Okay,
school. Okay, this is old school.
there you go.
If you see an activity in here, okay, I see this white box. It's telling me to contact Joe Buyer. If I click on the box, it's going to give me his name, things like that. The second to the last option is description, and it will give you that verbiage, that script, whatever you've put into that field.
And
But
on
you're
that
asked,
list,
yeah,
there is an icon in the lower right corner. I believe it will show additional information as well whenever you're in the list part of that. If you click
it
on the little icon, it'll
it
expand out the
does.
list.
It does, yeah. It does show you that as well. So that's a really good point. And I don't know if anyone can see this, but when you're in this activity, as Mark is saying, there's a drop down right here. So if I click on that drop down, it doesn't actually open up the activity. It just changes this view so that this right here, this small line, that is the actual description telling me more in context on what I need to do.
I was thinking it was there, but I couldn't remember if it was just the notes or if it was the description. So
Yeah. You're asking, what do we do if there's a husband and a wife?
yes.
Okay, well, in that context, right, Beth Homebuyer is probably not coming in with a husband and a wife. So one, you want to think through the context. In this case, she's the one that inquired, so I'm going to vet her. Of course, I'm going to see if she has a spouse and add that information in, but I'm just working to convert her. The other area that you're really probably going to think about how you're handling spouses is we typically coach to start that client on some kind of long-term contact nurture campaign to maintain an established relationship. And I get that question a lot. Do you start both contacts on there? And the answer to that question is, are you going to pick up the phone and call both of those people? Because there, in certain instances, it would be beneficial to maintain contact with both parties. But you know, Joe and Sarah, you only contact Sarah. Doesn't make a lot of sense to also run a workflow on Joe telling you to call him when you know you're not going to pick up the phone and call Joe. Now, I would suggest if you're going to celebrate that birthday, if you put Joe's birthday in there, it would still give you notification of his birthday. But I would just probably run that workflow on Sarah because you're still going to get notification of home purchase anniversaries. You're still going to get the call attempts. So you're really asking yourself, would you truly pick up the phone and call both of them? And most of the time you're not.
Right. Very good. Kendra, awesome job. Let's go through those last couple of things just to give everybody some additional notes on how they can get help and the services for premium services.
Yeah.
And then we'll call this a day.
Yep. So as I said, we work in our premium services department. For those of you on the webinar, if our navigator program is something you're interested in, we do give 25% off to attendees of these. So definitely, if you talk to Sales or myself, just mention that you attended this program to get that savings. We have weekly, bi-weekly, and go at your own pace training so that you can take the things that we're talking about today and have somebody work on one-on-one with you to really guide you and give you that suite of workflows, customize you and get you ramped up so that everything, because it's a lot, it can be a lot. And so that's exactly what my department does is we help you make sure that you're set up for success. So if you have any questions on the program, reach out to myself or sales, Kendra@realvolve.com, and we can get you some more information on that. Coming up next week, we're going to have a Q&A. So if you have questions that you want to go over, email those to me, Kendra@realvolve.com. I can add those in. We can talk through them. But we're going to talk about some commonly asked questions, some things that may be relevant in today's market and get some of those common questions answered. Coming up, we've got automation in your business, turning your data into dollars part 2. So going a little bit deeper and a little bit more context. And then we'll also be going over our Google add-on sheet for reporting in the future as well. When you're logged into Realvolve, we want to remind you to look at the black bottom bar and you have a how do I, which is a great resource. You type in something like set up my signature and it will give you a walkthrough. Click here, now click here. And so that can be a really great resource. If you see something that's just not quite working right in your system, you want to click submit a support ticket so that we're notified of that. Clicking on the help button down here gives you a searchable database of other questions, of articles, of previous blogs that can be a great resource. And then this contact us over here on the right during chat hours. We have chat available as well.
Awesome. Kendra, you did awesome. Thank you so much for your expertise. Any other quick questions before we cut off for the day?
Well, where did it go?
Where did what go?
Well, I was sending you something, Kendra, but I lost it when something. Anyway, I'll see you Tuesday.
Okay, sounds good. Email me if you need me.
Okay, will do.
All right,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. See you
Bye.
next week.